Growing up in Ghana and later the US, I've had the opportunity to learn about the built environment from two very different contexts. Looking at the social, economic, and political factors that have shaped the spaces and places that lives happen, it is very clear to see that a lot of these differences can sometimes overshadow a lot of the similarities that also lie there. Within these similarities lie the opportunity to find strategies and approaches that can tackle problems and solutions across the two contexts. To help frame this more holistic approach to the city, sometimes I look back at things I used to find mundane, like the many different modes by which we traverse the city and the many different conditions in which we do it in. As a lifelong walker, all the way from Kumasi, Ghana to Western Massachusetts, when I first moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, I was forced to not only learn how to ride a bike, but also drive a car, all within 2 years. This made me think about all the ways in which different cities might actually force different behaviors from the end users. During my undergrad thesis, Sideways Urbanism in the Greater Accra metropolitan area, I was able to find myself retracing some steps back home. Looking at this context, it became very apparent that what first started as a housing project needed to take on many different understandings, as well as a larger scope to be able to deliver the goals of the project. Looking at the site condition, Accra currently suffers from a lot of flooding. Drawing and sketching throughout this process became a way of having a more intimate understanding of what actually went into the site. Not only the people, but also the plants, animals, and infrastructural processes that would be necessary for the project to ever be realized. This process was not only enjoyable for me in terms of making me slow down and really think about all the processes that were there, but also created a different language or representation that really embodied the tactility of the site and how people already living there tend to live their lives. A combination of this new understanding of the land and drawing from the country's history of relying on hydroelectric dams can lead to new novel ideas on how to apply technology in means that is accessible to the audience that it's meant for. This is not meant to be a one-stop solution, but thinking about ways in which we can combine the forces of bottom-up and top-down development to create a new way of living the new conditions of the land, while also benefiting from the forces it generates. This type of thinking is not something that I'd once actually attributed to architecture, especially coming from a background where I had very little exposure to it. DocuSpace is an initiative I started with my good friend Robbie from this exact place of looking back at where we came from and where we are, especially looking the ways that it deviates from the understanding that I once had of architecture, one that was only limited to the building. This process has also unveiled a lot of the trappings that I fall in terms of how I understand architecture and how I communicate it as well. In short, it's very easy to talk to architecture with architects, but I think it's even more important to talk about architecture to people outside of architecture. As a designer, it's actually been quite challenging trying to strip back all the jargon and break down architecture in terms of its core meanings and foundations that can benefit all of us. Part of the novelty of having gained so much information and knowledge is the ability to also disperse some of this information. Looking back at my childhood, I never really understood what architects really do, at least not in how I understand it now. I sometimes reflect on the privilege of the experiences I've been able to have in architecture and how it allowed me to see the world around me in a different way and also have more agency in that. I believe that practice at its best continues to invite people into architecture and creates a space in which we can have a dialogue about our collective futures. My name is Appiah, and thank you so much for listening.